Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Thank you, devotees from Los Angeles. Seattle devotees Sri Devi, Rajesh, Prabha, Sai Kumar, and Vish are delighted to be part of these celebrations. Our current topic, 24 Gurus of Avaduta, is a summary of conversation extracted from Srimad Bhagavatam, Skanda 11, Chapter 7, named Krishna's Instruction, Avaduta's Sermon on His Teachers 1. Ramana Bhagavan used to narrate Avaduta's 24 Gurus stories to his devotees. Context: Maharaja Yadu, founder of Yadava dynasty in which Sri Krishna Bhagavan was born, once met an Avaduta Swami. Wise, intelligent, and a knower of Dharma as he was, Yadu observed the man and his Avaduta behavior. Seeing him to be a knower of truth, King Yadu prostrated to him and spoke to him politely. Sir, as I see you, I feel great wonder and astonishment. Though we possess the knowledge of the Shastras, we take great pains to gratify our senses. But you do not seem to be making any such effort. How has this extraordinary understanding come to you? Even though you possess so much knowledge and are erudite, why do you sometimes behave like a boy, a madman, or a dunce? So strange are your ways. It is indeed right for you not to seek gratification of the senses, but you do not seem to be making any effort to attain moksha. In spite of this, you appear to be always floating about in bliss. What has made this possible? The whole world is burnt like a forest by the wildfire of lust and wrath. While people like us are burning in that fire, you remain unaffected, happy, and calm. Without care, like a leader elephant, you are swimming in the Ganga. What has made this state of mind possible for you? Sir, kindly instruct me. Observing the distress and humility concealed in these words, the Avaduta comforted him thus. O King Yadu, you are sinless and know the ways of the world. I do not think that I have anything to teach you, but I have observed the world closely and obtained a little knowledge from a number of gurus. O King, I have 24 such gurus. These 24 are the earth, air, sky, water, fire, sun, moon, dove, Kapota, python, ocean, moth, honeybee, elephant, honey gatherer, deer, fish, Pingala the courtesan, Osprey, girl's bangles, Arrowsmith, snake, spider, worm, and the body. O King, I shall also tell you what I learned from each of them. Listen. 1. Earth. A man of self-control exhibits courage and does not move away from his chosen path even when attacked by beings under the sway of their destiny, prarabdha. Further, a spiritual aspirant should learn from the mountains and trees of the earth to strive unselfishly for the good of others and find the meaning of his existence in such striving. Lesson. A sadhaka should have courage to pursue his ultimate goal with an attitude of selfless service like the earth and trees.
2. Air. The sage should be satisfied with as much food as is required to maintain his prana, to keep his knowledge bright and his faculties of his mind and senses intact. He should not crave for tasty food. A yogi who is established in Atman consciousness, even if he is embodied in a material body and performs the various functions appropriate to such a body, is never affected by the sense objects, as air untouched by good and bad effects of such contacts. Lesson. A sadhaka like the air should remain unaffected by different experiences of pleasure or pain.
3. Sky. Identifying himself with Brahman, The sage should realize that, like the sky, the self, the Atman, is untouched and unaffected by the body. Just as the clouds drifted by the wind do not affect the sky, so the Atman is not tainted by abundance in the body. Lesson: a sadhaka, like the sky, should establish himself in the self-knowledge and remain untainted by the sensory inputs.
4. Water. Water is life. A thirsty person feels happy at the merry sight of water. Its touch brings coolness in his body and mind. Water gives life to all. Moreover, it is cool, fluid, and pure. It removes all impurities. Water removes the distress of heat and thirst and gives happiness and peace. The sage is pure, holy, and naturally loving and sweet, exercises a sanctifying influence on man, in which respect he resembles the holy waters of the Ganga, which purify men by sight, contact, and praise. Lesson: a sadhaka needs to serve all with purity of mind and heart, just like water.
5. Fire. Impressive when replenished by the fire of tapas, inviolable in his greatness, having no possessions, not even a bowl, but only his stomach as a receptacle for food, eating anything and everything, the sage, who is ever in communion with the Brahman, remains unpolluted like the all-consuming fire. This world, which is of the nature of cause and effect, has been created by the all-powerful Lord by his power of Maya. He has entered into it and is manifesting himself in different forms through the adjunct of the body-mind, just as fire does, residing in the fuel. Lesson: a sadhaka who is in communion with Brahman has the energy and purity of fire in his actions.
6. Moon. The changes that time, the inscrutable, brings on an individual from the time of conception to the events at the cremation ground affect only the body and not the Atman, just as the waxing and the waning of the moon are only of its phases and not of the moon itself. Lesson: a sadhaka not identifying himself with the body should grasp the knowledge of the imperishable nature of the Atman like a changeless moon.
7. Sun. Just as the sun absorbs water with his rays and releases it in proper time as rain, so the yogi accepts objects of the senses with the sense not for his own enjoyment, but to release them to the needy people at the proper time. When the Atman abides in himself, no difference is experienced. When he abides in adjuncts, cross-minded people think of him as many. It is just like the one sun reflected in different adjuncts, like pans of water being looked upon as many and diverse. Lesson: a sadhaka like the sun should accept wealth and other worldly possessions as long as he donates them to people in need. Reflections of the sun in multiple pans of water emanate from one source like Atman.
8. Kapota, dove. Once, on a branch of a tree in a forest, a kapota bird had built its nest and had been staying in it with his most loving wife for some time. The female bird laid eggs there, and in due time, lovely fledglings with charming limbs and feathers came out of those eggs. Bound together by strong bonds of love, the Kapota couple anxiously nourished their offsprings. One day they had gone out into the forest to collect food and were away for a long time from their nest. A hunter who was moving about in the forest happened to see these chicks fluttering in their nest. He thereupon cast his net and caught them in it. Seeing her young chicks crying, bound by the cords of love, the female bird became desperate with sorrow and rushed to them. Forgetful of the danger, posed by the net, and in spite of seeing her children's condition, she rushed in only to be entangled in the net. Seeing the perilous condition of his wife and children, the Kapota bird also felt very helpless about his condition and rushed and got caught in the net. Thus, a householder whose senses are uncontrolled and mind restless, who is always engaged in the concerns of the family, runs the risk of perishing with the whole family like the Kapota parents and their fledglings. Lesson: a sadhaka should not have any intense love or attachment to anyone or anything. Otherwise, he'll be subjected to excruciating suffering like the afflicted dove of the story.
9. Python. Just as the heaven affords sensuous pleasures to creatures, so does the hell too, along with the sufferings predominating it. So, a wise man should not hanker after sense enjoyment. Whatever food comes to one by chance, irrespective of whether it is tasty or not, adequate or inadequate, one should consume it like a python, without making any effort to obtain it. A saintly person should remain peaceful and materially inactive, maintaining his body without much endeavor. He should always remain alert in the awareness of the self. Lesson: a sadhaka must be content with what he has and avoid getting caught in sense enjoyments like a python.
10. Ocean. The Muni should be like the ocean, still and calm, but deep and profound and unfathomable, inviolable, boundless and unperturbed. The sage whose mind is absorbed in the contemplation of Narayan is neither exhilarated by the plentiful subject of objects of enjoyment nor dejected in their absence, just like the ocean that keeps its bounds, neither overflowing nor shrinking, irrespective of whether water flows in or evaporates. Lesson: a sadhaka whose mind is in Brahman remains calm and deep and does not waver like the profound ocean.
11. Moth. At the sight of woman, the Lord's instrument of delusion, the man of uncontrolled senses who is attracted by her charms falls into the blinding darkness of ignorance, just as the moth attracted by the flow of fire falls into it and perishes. Women, gold, ornaments, clothes, etc., the creation of Maya, offer attraction to man as objects of enjoyment. Their infatuation deprives him of his discriminative vision and generates in him intense attachment to them. He thus falls a victim to the sense objects as moths to fire and perishes. Lesson: a sadhaka, unlike a moth, should regulate his sense of sight and remain centered in the Atman.
12. Honeybee. Following the way of the honey-gathering bee, the sage may collect small quantities of food from house to house, just enough for the upkeep of his body, and even that without being a burden on the householders. An intelligent man should seek the essential teachings of all scriptural texts of varying importance, just as a honeybee sucks the essence of all flowers. An ascetic should not store food that he has got as holy alms, for the evening or for the next day. His palm should be his receiving plate, and the stomach a preserving vessel. He should not accumulate like the bee. A mendicant should not store anything even for the morrow, for if he accumulates, he is likely to perish like the bee along with the accumulated property. Lesson: a sadhaka like a honey bee should only accumulate essential knowledge. The worldly possessions should be obtained just enough for the upkeep of his body.
13. Elephant. An ascetic should not allow contact with a young woman. By such contact, he will get bound, as a bull elephant is entrapped through physical contact with a cow elephant. Lesson: a sadhaka, unlike the trapped bull elephant, should regulate his sense of touch and remain centered in the Atman.
14. Honey gatherer. The wealth accumulated by a miser without himself enjoying it or making a charitable gift of it is knocked away by someone who knows about it, just as the honey gathered by bees is taken away by the honey collector. The first portion of what a householder cooks with things procured with great difficulty for his household purposes is consumed by ascetics, just as the honey gathered by bees is first consumed by the honey gatherer. It is the duty of the householder to give the best portion of what he cooks as bhiksha to ascetics. An ascetic need not therefore worry about his food. Lesson: a sadhaka, after working hard, gathering wealth and food, should give a portion of those back to the welfare of the society. Otherwise, nature retrieves them through its own means, just like the honeybee's honey is consumed by the honey gatherer.
15. Deer. A forest-dwelling ascetic or sannyasin should not listen to vulgar music, lest he should thereby get entangled. This he should learn from the example of the deer, which is captured through the hunter's imitative cry of the doe. Lesson: a sadhaka, unlike the trapped deer, should regulate his sense of hearing and remain centered in the Atman.
16. Fish. Just as fish perish by swallowing the angler's baited hook, so do men perish through the attraction of the palate, which causes intense excitement to the mind. By abstinence, wise men conquer all the senses except the palate, whose craving only becomes intensified by much abstinence. Even if a person has gained mastery over all the other senses, he cannot be called a conqueror of the senses until he has subdued the palate. If the palate is conquered, all the other senses are as good as conquered. Lesson: a sadhaka, unlike a fish, should focus on subduing his palate. Regulating the sense of taste plays a tremendous impact on conquering other senses and also in centering oneself in the Atman.
17. Pingala. Once there lived a well-known courtesan named Pingala in the city of Videha. Once dressed in all her finery, she stationed herself outside her door, ready to receive anyone who wanted her service. Potential clients came and went away, as that woman expected the arrival of some man still more wealthy and capable of making her a still more handsome payment. Motivated by greed, she waited outside, went in, and came out again, foregoing sleep till midnight. Thus despondent and downcast with unfulfilled greed, a great feeling of revulsion against worldliness came, making her thoughtful and full of peace. At the dawn of renunciation, she sang a song showing how dispassion proves to be the sword that cuts the bonds of desire in man. Just as one without illumination will not abandon the sense of I and mine, so also a man without dispassion will not give up, or even have a desire to give up, the feeling that he is the body and nothing but the body. Lo, giving up the delight giving and bounteous lover seated closest to me in the heart, I, an ignorant woman, have been running after petty creatures who cannot fulfill my wants, but only purvey sorrow, fear, worry, and delusion. In this city of Videha, I, an impure woman, am the only fool who has been after objects of love other than the Supreme Lord Achyuta, who gives himself over to those who are devoted to him. The Supreme Being Achyuta is the friend, the innermost essence, and the dearest of the dear of all beings. I shall dedicate my body, mind, and soul to him, and just like his consort Rama, seek delight in him. By virtue of some good and pious work done in the past, the Lord Vishnu has now been gracious to me. Otherwise, how can I, who have been greedy and vicious, now attain the spirit of non-attachment and renunciation which has conferred on the great joy? If I were really as unfortunate woman devoid of the Lord's grace, this misfortune of not getting income would not have befallen me, generating renunciation. It is through renunciation that a man breaks through the bonds of home, wealth, relatives, etc., and attains to supreme peace. Accepting the great blessings he has conferred on me, I give up here and now all my hankerings for sense pleasures and take refuge in him, the Lord of all. Who else except the Supreme Lord Mahavishnu can lift up and save the jiva that has fallen into the deep pit of transmigratory existence with his eyes of discrimination blinded by sense objects and himself caught in the jaws of serpent of time. One should realize that the whole universe is in the jaws of the serpent of time. When, with this awareness, man becomes alert to his real situation in life, he develops renunciation. Then his own higher self, the Paramatman, becomes the savior of the Jiva. Desire is the source of the most poignant sorrows and desirelessness of the most intense delight. Lesson: a sadhaka like the courtesan should realize the temporary nature of the world, develop renunciation, and focus all his attention towards permanent bliss of the Atman.
18. Osprey. An osprey bird that was in possession of a piece of meat was attacked by other powerful birds who had no meat. When it gave up that piece of meat, it was at peace, being free from such attacks. The more a sense object is considered desirable and sought after by men, the more it is a source of sorrow and suffering for them. A man who knows this and owns nothing, including his body and his sense of identification with it, attains infinite joy. Lesson: a sadhaka, like an osprey, should let go of his current hold on the sense objects to find his inner peace.
19. Girls' Bangles. In a certain place, some people arrived at a house with marriage proposal for a girl of that house. As all the elders of the house had gone out somewhere, the girl herself received the visitors. In order to extend proper hospitality to them, the girl now began to husk paddy in a solitary place. While doing so, the conch bangles on her arm made a loud clanging sound by mutual impact. The intelligent girl now felt ashamed that the sound of the conch bangles, a poor girl's ornament, would betray and expose the poverty of the house. So she broke those bangles, one after another, except a pair on each arm. Even these pair of bangles on the arm produced noise while she continued husking. So she broke one more bangle on each arm. Then there was no sound, there being only one bangle on each arm. If too many people live together, quarrels will be the result. If there are two only, even then, time will be taken with mutual conversations and not contemplation on the Atman. Lesson: a sadhaka should always live alone in the mental plane and contemplate on the Atman.
20. Arrowsmith. The arrowsmith, being fully concentrated on the arrowhead he is forging, is unaware even of a king with his retinue passing by. The mind should be held to the object of concentration with great vigilance. It should be concentrated on that being, by getting absorbed in whom all tendencies of work get gradually eliminated. Further, such meditation enhances sattva, leading to the elimination of rajas and tamas, which cause agitation and inertia in the mind. A sage whose mind is absorbed in the Atman as pure self-awareness is without any experience of inside and outside objects pertaining to them. Lesson: a sadhaka who is absorbed in the self remains with single point focus and does not get distracted by the external world, just like an attentive arrowsmith.
21. Snake. A snake makes no home but goes into the holes made by other creatures and rests there happily. Similarly, a yogi should have no home of his own but rest in other people's homes temporarily. Like the snake, a yogi should be a lone wanderer, homeless, always vigilant, residing in caves difficult to recognize by externals, solitary, without assistants, and reserved mode of speech. Lesson: a sadhaka, like a snake, should practice dispassion in worldly affairs and practice moderation in every way.
22. Spider. The spider brings out its web from within itself through the mouth, sports in it for some time, and then withdraws it into itself. So does the Supreme Being create, spread, and withdraw the universe all by himself. Lesson: a sadhaka needs to realize that the universe is a sport emanating from and dissolving back into the Supreme Being, just like the spider's web emanates in and out of the spider.
23. Worm. The worm, placed in a hole by the wasp and continually frightened by its buzzing sound, turns into the shape of the wasp, even without giving up its old body. On whatever objects a person concentrates his mind, whether it be from love, animosity, or fear, that person attains the state of that object. Lesson: similar to a worm taking a shape of a wasp, sadhaka too becomes what he is contemplating on. Those very same attributes and behaviors define him.
24. One's body. This body has been the teacher from whom I learned the lessons of dispassion and discrimination. Through repeated births and deaths, with incessant misery as its fruit, it has taught me dispassion. It is only with the help of the body I can reflect on truth and then practice discrimination. Man supports his family and relatives with hard-earned money to nurture this body. In the end, this body, nurtured with such great difficulty, perishes, leaving behind, like a tree, the seed of future bodies in the shape of the effects of karma. This human body, which is attainable only after countless births in various species, is a very rare blessing that one could get. In spite of its impermanence, it is very precious, as the knowledge of the supreme truth and also the other values can be had only through it. A wise man should therefore strive for the attainment of the ultimate good, liberation from the transmigratory cycle. To do the otherwise will be a great loss, for sense enjoyment is possible in other bodies too. Lesson: a sadhaka knows that human birth is a rare opportunity, so he dedicates his precious time to develop dispassion, discrimination, and to attain liberation before the body disintegrates.
Conclusion. The Avadhuta summarizes his learning from the 24 gurus this way. 1. Learning many lessons from several gurus, dispassion has dawned on me and I have obtained the light of discriminative intelligence. So I am established in the Atman, devoid of any attachments and without any sense of I or feeling of agency and possession. 2. With one guru alone, knowledge may not be firmly and completely established. So while there is one supreme guru, there may be upagurus or subsidiary teachers for instructing on various aspects of spiritual doctrine and practice. Lesson: a sadhaka should understand the ultimate goal of human birth and dedicate his entire focus to contemplating on his true nature, taking his attention away from worldly affairs. Now we would like to invite San Diego Satsang to continue the celebrations. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.